So I'm just drawing a picture of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and it just reminds me of a situation, an argument that I got into with a guy a few years ago, and it's just well, I'll tell you what happened really. So basically, and he's a very nice guy, right? I got along with him. He's very down to earth, He's building his own house. I'm staying at an eco-village, volunteering. I met him, we had a good chat. It seems very nice, and we're getting along quite well, alright? And we got along chatting, and this conversation, and it got onto sort of morality in that, because the house where we were staying in, they're quite religious. Everyone there has got differing religious beliefs, whether they're Christian, pagan, or, whatever they are. I didn't interrogate and find out what the beliefs are. I'm not, I'd rather get to know who they are, but I don't like labels. But anyway, it got into this conversation about what is the purpose of it? Is there a purpose to life? In other words, I must have put forward an opinion, there's a moral dimension, learning morally, that's our purpose, isn't it? Right. He has this view, he had this awful view, and I say awful, and I do think that, because that's what riled me. It's furious, actually, to be honest. And it's a view that many people have, to be honest with you, right, that still angers me. Of this moral relativism. That he came out with this theory, ridiculous, of saying, that all our moral views are constructs. They are social constructs that we have created in our minds, or that are created by the society that we live in, and that there are no real absolute moral beliefs, and that it's just a product of either our individual opinions or of the society that we happen to be living in, and I countered that by saying, like, quite understandably, like, well, what about, if someone you knew was raped? I don't want to say something awful like that, but what about, surely you'd be against that, and surely anyone from any society would be, I hope, regardless of what background you're from. That, that should be, I know that there are some contentious issues in life, like smoking, where people say, oh, is it wrong or right? I get that. I understand there are a lot of grey areas. I'm not doubting that. But there are a lot of clear-cut areas where it's absolutely wrong. If I harm myself, well, who am I? It's myself I'm harming. If I go out and commit genocide and mutilate other people, if I kill an innocent person, surely that's wrong in any culture. Is that not an absolute? Or is there any culture, is there any society that could say, oh, it's right to take an innocent person's life? No, I'm not saying about killing. That's a bigger issue, isn't it? I'm saying in terms of murder, and murder, as I would define it, and I think is a standard definition, is taking an innocent life of someone that's not a threat to anyone. It's not someone that's not armed, not posing any risk to anyone. You know, that there are cultures that allow that, and sure, I don't deny that. There are individuals that do, but I'm saying that that's morally wrong. Surely, there's got to be an absolute, and if you don't think that, then why don't you go out and get murdered, and or if one of your family does, don't care about it. That's okay, isn't it? It's not okay. It's not okay for anyone, is it? Surely, it's a ridiculous thing. There are obviously, to me, moral laws in life. It's not a question of some things obviously are disputable whether they're right or wrong. But this idea of moral relativism, I found that is a complete fraud and one of the worst things that is going on. It's not a new thing. It goes back to an ancient world, actually. This idea of let's do anything. Let's have no rules. Well, it's good to have rules, of course, but what are those? And if we can agree on some, I think that's a great thing, actually. And the idea of having no rules, that's the most abominable thing you can imagine, actually. I'm glad he's not in the power, actually. To be honest, although you wonder, don't you, these days? But yeah, if you believe in no rules, it's like, fuck you. And I don't mean to swear, but I really do mean that, actually, because there are some rules that you've got to have, haven't you? And like, if you don't think that, then you really are either a psychopath or you're delusional and you've been programmed, or you've been sort of to think otherwise, because there's got to be some absolute moral laws in life. There have to be. You don't agree with going out and raping and murdering people and causing unnecessary harm to others. Who does? Well, unless you're a psychopath and you don't give a shit about anyone. There are people like that. Now, this guy wasn't like that. He was a very nice guy, very down to earth, and he didn't think. He seemed to have that incredible thought that some liberals do these days, that even such basic rules of human rights like that are somehow constructs of our imagination, or social constructs that we've been programmed to think somehow. And it's like, oh my goodness, and that's why I got really angry at him, and I would at anyone, to be honest, that thinks like that, because I think that is absolutely delusional, amoral, and disgusting. And if you don't care enough about your family or even strangers to want a basic decency of human rights for them not to be murdered or raped or to be treated in any kind of abhorrent way, then I think you really need to look at what your ideology is, actually, and something fundamentally wrong if you have got that that belief that everything is somehow morally irrelevant. There's a moral dimension to everything, and that's the way it is. Choose to accept it or not. I think if you're the victim of something, or if a friend or family member of yours is, you'll think otherwise, but it shouldn't have to be like that. You actually, you can understand and relate to other people's suffering without having to go through it, actually, and understand that actually, there's a good reason for having some sort of moral code of conduct. I'm not saying that we understand and agree on everything as humans. We don't. No, there's a lot of areas of dispute and there's a lot of grey areas, absolutely. But there's certain areas where what makes us human and humane is that we recognise some boundaries of what's right and wrong. And I think if you don't recognise that, there is something fundamentally wrong with you. And it's like, and I would say to those people, I'm sorry, but if you don't change how you're behaving or allowing other people to behave, that's just totally wrong. If you think it's okay for anyone to get away with anything, no, it's not. And you got the freedom to do lots of actions, but not the freedom from the consequences of those actions. If you don't have the empathy to care about how that affects other people, there is something terribly wrong, actually. And I think what worried me at the time was just how common his belief is, actually. But he's an intellectual, and just the fact that someone is learned and studied doesn't show that they care that much. Compassion isn't related to your intelligence, I worked out. I would rather someone was a kind simpleton than an intelligent monster at the end of the day. I'd rather that they were, someone that was an intelligent and compassionate person. My gosh. But what your IQ and your mental capacity isn't what makes you a person, yeah? How your conduct is and how you relate to other people, I think, is. And anyway, God, that's my rant. And I just found it extraordinary. He was such a nice guy as well. That's what made me all the more concerned. If supposedly nice people can think that sort of crazy thing, it's nice to say that there are no absolute moral guidelines. Nobody knows the absolute guide of everything that's right to do, right, in every culture, in every society, all of the time. But at the same time, it's just ridiculous to say no one knows ever what anything is right and everything is irrelevant. Everything is a social construct. That is just a complete amoral, immoral situation. Propaganda, I would say. And I feel sorry for people that think that. And I feel sorry for their family as well. Because, in actual fact, I think that guy, although he said that, he was a hypocrite. He would never live like that. If someone hurt a member of his family, he wouldn't abide by that. He wouldn't think, oh, okay, my child got hurt by a stranger. It's a social construct. Yeah, like shit would he? No way. I'm sure he wouldn't. And it shouldn't be like things that are taught to you shouldn't be the way you think without you actually questioning, oh, is that how I would like to be treated, or people that I care about? I think there is a danger of us assuming that we know what's always moral and always right. We don't, actually. There's a lot of grey areas and situations where, it's really hard to know in some situations, isn't it? What's right and wrong, huh? I get that, and but there's some areas that are absolutely clear and you know what's right and wrong, yeah? And it's like, that isn't absolute. And and it doesn't matter what culture you're in. Like, taking advantage of someone that's vulnerable and abusing them, I don't care what culture or century or continent you're from, or religion or race or age or sexuality. That doesn't matter to me. Abusing someone that's vulnerable is wrong to me in any situation. And if you try to justify that from your situation, that's bullshit to me. And I'm sorry to swear, that's a moral grey area, okay? But that's a wrong thing, and I'm never going to waver on that. Never going to see a difference from that. Like, I know what they say, like, look at young teenagers, right, as an example, right? There are anthropological studies in some societies where young teenagers, right, have relationships with older people, and that's a norm, and that's part of their society. And people say, oh, well, in your society, it's not allowed, it's frowned upon, it's illegal. In other societies, it's okay, and that's a cultural difference you've got to respect. No, because there are some cultures that say some things are right, sometimes a law system says it's right, sometimes a law system says it's wrong. But that doesn't, you can't go by what our society says to you. They can be right or wrong. What a majority thinks, what an establishment thinks, what you think, even what I think can be right or wrong. Yeah? We all can make mistakes. But I just think you have to look at it and discern and say, is it moral and that? And it doesn't matter to me about offending other people. But if somebody, an adult, has a relationship with a young teenager and takes advantage of them, I'm sorry, but I will see it as wrong, and I don't care what society they say them from, or what defence they say, or I can quite understand if you're from a society where that's the norm, that you maybe didn't know any difference, that's perhaps understandable, but it's still wrong.